Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. I want to just, first of all, acknowledge, it's always important to not just acknowledge the Indigenous territories that we're gathered on Treaty 2, but also to acknowledge our commitment to fighting for justice for the First People of this land. I want to give a big shout out to our incredible candidate in this riding in Kenora, Janine Seymour. She is an Indigenous lawyer, powerful voice. Janine's going to make a big difference for the people of Kenora, and really, really excited to have her on the team and excited to be here. We just had an exchange, a tobacco exchange, and I made a commitment that I would come back to the Kenora riding and spend time with some of the Indigenous communities that have been neglected and forgotten for too long and deserve attention, deserve someone that's going to meet with them and spend time with them. So I've made that commitment, and we exchanged tobacco, so it's a done deal. It's got to happen now. I want to acknowledge the incredible leadership of Wab Kinew, the future Premier of Manitoba, and leader of the New Democratic Party in Manitoba, and his support and his friendship. And I also want to acknowledge Saul Mamakwa, member of Provincial Parliament, who represents a riding that has a very a strong population of Indigenous communities, and someone who's been a really fierce voice in Queen's Park, and has really brought a lot of grace and a lot of power to the issues that impact Indigenous people and to all people. And I'm just really honored to have these folks here. And I want to again make my commitment as leader of this party and our movement. We believe in justice. We want to fight to make sure the First People of this land receive that justice. We're committed to fighting for clean drinking water, making sure we bring all the children home, make sure that we are fighting for housing. We're fighting for human rights and dignity and respecting treaty rights, and working together with Indigenous communities in a nation-to-nation relationship with respect and partnership and allyship. That's my commitment, and I'm honored to be here today again to make that commitment with my friend and our candidate, Janine Seymour, who's a candidate for Kenora, and my friends and colleagues with me. Thank you so much for being here. And I know the media might have some questions, so I'll leave it at that. And thank you so much, and looking forward to your questions.
Right on, Jagmeet.
Thank you.
Good job.
No pressure. You know, I really think about this a lot, and it's a question that comes up a lot. Pretty much everywhere I go, when people think about what is the hallmark of the injustice against Indigenous people, people think about the horrors of residential institutions, and then they immediately think about clean drinking water. The fact that Indigenous communities still don't have it. And I've been racking my mind thinking, why is that the case? And I think about the fact we're in the 21st century, in a country that's a G7 nation, with the wealth and technology we have. I do not buy any excuse that this could not have been done before. Looking at the evidence, looking at the technology, looking at the resources we have, my only conclusion is that it's simply not been a priority. That is the only thing. There's nothing else that I can come up with. There is no other explanation. There's no technical excuse that I buy that justifies why this hasn't happened yet. And so really, I believe wholeheartedly it is a matter of priority. And we have seen when governments make something a priority, they do it. At the beginning of this pandemic, Justin Trudeau backstopped banks with $750 billion of financing. That is a colossal sum, but that shows his priorities. When it came to banks, he was willing to jump through hoops and do whatever it took. But when it comes to Indigenous people, he didn't have that same commitment. That's really what it comes down to, is the commitment. I have that commitment. I am not Justin Trudeau. I am different, and I will make this happen. So when we think about the trauma, I think people can just would just understand that, you know, if someone goes through something as traumatic as the residential institution that was designed very much to kill Indigenous people, to strip them of their language, identity, sense of self, that it would make sense that there would be intergenerational trauma. But it's a very different thing to know that and to kind of understand that in just the words versus meeting people. And I've met with people. I remember this healing circle we went to where there was a survivor, and right next to the survivor there was a daughter of a survivor, and then right next to the daughter there was grandchildren. And they explicitly described how that trauma was an unbroken legacy of injustice, how that trauma directly, for kids who grew up not having a mom, not knowing who they were, how that trauma directly impacted the next generation and how that directly impacted the following. So it is real. This trauma is absolutely intergenerational, and it has horrible impacts. And so a part of our commitment to make sure that every single child is found and brought back home is also to commit to healing and healing the communities that are dealing with this trauma. And when we invest in things like an Indigenous, for Indigenous, by Indigenous housing strategy, not just in reserves and rural communities, but also in urban centers, this is a part of the work that we have to do to remedy the injustice. Well, I understand that cynicism. I understand why people might feel like, what's the point of voting? When they had someone like Justin Trudeau who made all these great promises and said all these great words and didn't back them up. So I understand why people are cynical. I would ask them to give me a chance. I believe very deeply in justice. It's something that my mom taught me, the fact that we're all connected, we're all one, and that when we see people around us suffering, we're also suffering. We cannot build a just country unless the first people of this land get justice. I believe that in my heart, and I'm committed to that. And in terms of how do we mobilize people to vote, well, one of the reasons why you mentioned the Indigenous community voting more, one of the rock stars behind that is actually in this crowd, Tanya Cameron, who is just a big shout out to her. She doesn't like the limelight, and she probably didn't want that shout out, but she is one of the reasons why we were able to organize so many people. She is a powerhouse. And so there are incredible leaders like Tanya that will help us organize and mobilize. I want to encourage everybody, get out and vote. In this election, it is more important than ever. You can mail-in vote, you can vote in person, you can vote early at the returning office. I want to encourage everyone to vote as much as you can. Well, you can only vote once, but as much as you can, please encourage people to get out and vote. On est prêt à travailler ensemble avec le Québec et on a mentionné à plusieurs reprises notre engagement de travailler ensemble. On reconnaître les droits du Québec, c'est important de reconnaître ces droits et d'être des alliés. En matière de cette question spécifiquement, à ce moment, notre position, c'est une compétence fédérale et on va garder cette compétence, mais on peut trouver des façons de travailler ensemble pour s'assurer que le Québec a les outils de répondre aux besoins spécifiques pour le Québec et on est toujours prêt à trouver des façons de travailler ensemble.
Et dernière question, il y a un point de presse demain d'une de vos anciennes candidates, députée vedette, Ruth-Hélène Brosseau. Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire là-dessus?
Ruth-Hélène Brosseau, c'est vraiment une candidate vedette. Quelqu'un qui était mon leader en chambre, elle était House Leader, elle était tellement compétente et elle a vraiment inspiré une génération de Québécois et Québécoises. Son histoire, c'est vraiment impressionnant et le travail qu'elle a fait, elle a vraiment choqué, je pense, plusieurs personnes qui ont douté sa capacité et je suis très fier de cette histoire parce qu'elle est une voix forte pour les Québécois et Québécois, particulièrement pour les gens qui habitent dans les communautés rurales. Donc, j'ai hâte de voir Ruth-Hélène Brosseau encore comme députée dans la Chambre de communs Et je pense que la communauté a besoin d'une voix comme elle. Uh, I'm just saying that I would be honored for her to be again in Ottawa. I think she's amazing, and I think that she really proved a lot of doubters wrong. She inspired a lot of people, and I would want nothing more to see her again in Ottawa. I can't speak for her though in terms of what she's going to do, but I was again expressing how much I'm a fan of her, how amazing she is, and how great a voice she would be for the people of the community that she represented if she was to become the MP again. And I would think nothing better for that community than to see her as MP again. But again, it is up to her to let folks know what her decision is going to be. Yes. I like how you tried to make me scoop that though. It's going to be on Ruth Len to make that decision.
Aboriginal issues are key to this riding, but tourism as well. So basically, for 2 years, the tourism industry has lost revenue. So what are the NDP planning to help the industry?
I really appreciate the question. I want to say that tourism has been impacted across Canada. I know Kenora is a community that really relied on that tourism. Lots of people, as you can tell, it's incredibly beautiful with lakes and lots of reasons for people to come and visit. Wab is mentioning great fishing out here. Lots of great reasons to be out here, and I know that the tourism sector has been really hard hit. We've committed to acknowledge that there are sectors that are hard hit more than others and that they might need additional supports. We know that not just the tourism, but also the service sector, restaurants are not at full capacity. People aren't able to go back to where things were. So we need to continue to look at ways to provide additional supports for those sectors that have been harder hit. I think about artists and musicians and festivals where people rely on large gatherings. Those aren't happening yet and may not be for the next little while. So we need to make sure we're supporting those communities and those sectors that are hard hit, particularly so that those workers continue to have a way to earn a living and to provide them with the supports they need so they can get back on their feet when the sector recovers.
I actually have a question for Janine and Sol, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind at all. They're amazing.
Janine, so,
I'm just going to step aside though.
that's okay. I'm
You ready,
curious about, we've been going around to a lot of urban ridings, and we know generally how people are campaigning in urban ridings in this pandemic election. But Janine, maybe you first. You know this is one of the biggest ridings in the world, let alone Canada. How do you do that? How are you campaigning? Can you do the equivalent of door knocking? How are internet connections in some of these communities? Can you talk about how you're doing the job of a candidate? And I'd like to hear Sol, who's got some experience on that.
Miigwech. So thanks for shedding light to the challenges that we face here. It's not just during campaign, it's just how we live too, and how to get access to services and vital services at that. So during the campaign, my strategy, because we are still in a pandemic, this election was called during a pandemic time and it's posing great challenges. So last night, actually, Saul assisted me with his social media following. So I'm going to look to my brothers behind me and the following that they have to try to get the message out. I'm also looking to reporters and that. The canvassing, I'm also being very respectful to people. We're emerging out of a pandemic. Some people are quite hesitant to be close and to have me come to their residence. So as respectfully as possible, I'm trying to get out to the people, but also say, please come see me. I'm available. I want to hear from you. Please come, please reach out. So that's my strategy there. Miigwech.
Miigwech for the question. Certainly it's Northern Ontario is a very unique riding whereby we have municipalities but also fly-in First Nations, and it's no easy way to do it. Like as Janine mentioned, that's just a way of life for us. That's just the way things are. And people do not understand that are in downtown Toronto. Somebody sitting in their living room in Mississauga, they don't understand that. And I think it's really unique that we have to be able to fly to communities, to, whether it's one community per day, or whether it's 2 communities per day, whether it's 3 communities per day. And it's that's the challenge that we have. And do we have the resources to be able to do that? And like say example, you do 3 communities per day, you're limited to about you know, 2.5 hours per community when you do 3 communities. You're limited to 4.5 hours per community if you do 2 communities. So it's a challenge, especially during a pandemic. You know, like the communities in the north, they are in a crisis, within a crisis, within a crisis, within a pandemic. So it's a challenging times, and especially when this election is called during that time, and you know, where things are, you know, the lost children that went to residential school is put in the back burner in the stories, and the water sewer, the water issues that we face, the water boil virus, they're in the back burner, and this is what's happening with this. Miigwech.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yes.
JD Hodden from Kenora Online and Dry. Now, this actually is a question for yourself and Janine.
Okay.
Obviously,
You're making me take my mask on and off. It's all good.
obviously in northwestern Ontario, this has been one of the worst forest fire seasons in probably recent memory. And I just want to ask the both of you, what are you going to do to add more resources, firefighting resources, to prevent large-scale forest fires that have evacuated many Indigenous communities this year?
I really appreciate the question. I was able to meet with some of the evacuated communities with Saul. We were in Thunder Bay maybe a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago, and we were able to meet with some of the communities, and it's really tough to be away from home. They had a wedding planned actually, and they had to have the wedding in the place where they were evacuated. But it showed some incredible resilience. They said, you know, we had this wedding plan, we're going to do it anyways. But just think about like how disruptive that is to be completely dislocated from where you are, and then to have to find a way to celebrate when you're not in your home. So it's been really, really difficult. And we know that this is becoming more of a reality, the extreme weathers that we're seeing, the extreme weather patterns, hotter and drier summers, longer fire periods. So it's been really tough. What we want to do is a couple of things. First, we've got to fight the climate crisis. There's no question about it. We've got to fight it with everything we have. We also have to invest in resilience for communities. A lot of communities, with the right investments proactively ahead of time, could become more resilient and more protected in case of any extreme weather, including forest fires. And then finally, when it comes to the firefighting capacity, the federal level has to be a better partner to provide resources and support so that we can respond quickly when there are crises, so that we can evacuate, but we also can fight those fires and keep people in their homes. The best scenario is when people can stay in their homes, and we need to do everything we can to make it so. Thanks. Do you want to ask that, Janine?
I just want to speak further from a really localized perspective here, because the forest fire evacuations, they've impacted all communities, including my community, who's taken in evacuees. And I think we're in a dire situation when reservations under boil water advisories are hosting evacuees from other reservations. This is a crisis, and absolutely needs to be properly all resourced. I think that there should be forest fire training for First Nations, so we should be able to manage that ourselves. And I just want to make a little comment too, because the evacuees we're talking about are people, which is quite scary and alarming for people who have been here since time immemorial, leaving their homes. But also animals, wildlife. And I think people in town and the urban centers are noticing now with the bear population. They're also evacuating their homes. And so I am Bear Clan, and I speak about that. And what that means is those are my ancestors too. And we have a duty to protect and care for all. And so that's something that I think that we need to care about in addition. As well as I would like to ensure that the host communities, so Winnipeg is a host community, Thunder Bay, Kenora, Rat Portage is taking them into, really are culturally appropriate. So the people that are seeking help aren't harmed further as much as possible. So just miigwech, JD.
Yep.
Appreciate that, Creason. First of all, I hope we can meet at Council of the Federation table as a Premier and Prime Minister. I will have a lengthy list. Give me the fist bump on that one. I will have a lengthy list of demands to roll out to my brother Jagmeet here. But on a realistic level, I think what's happening around representation in the NDP is super important. It's important to young people. I know representation matters to young people, but I hope everyone in Canada recognizes how much representation matters, because for too long, people from some of our communities weren't being represented in some of the halls of power. If we want the best government possible, how can we be sure we were getting the best leaders if they weren't coming from all aspects of society, knowing that talent is evenly distributed in all communities across Canada? But now I'm very excited to be part of a party, the NDP, that really is taking big steps forward to help ensure that everyone in Canada can be confident that you're getting the best leaders from all walks of life, and as a result, it's going to make our democracy that much stronger. Yeah.
I'm not sure I can top that, but I genuinely look forward to the day where there is a Wab Kinew Premier and a Jagmeet Singh Prime Minister. It's weird to talk to myself in the third person, but we're going to make that happen. We're going to make that happen, and I think it's going to be because it's going to make people's lives better. Like what you get with New Democrats, you get someone committed to fighting for you, fighting to make your life better. And Wab's right. You know, when you think about, like, I can think about little Jagmeet growing up. Again, I'm talking to myself in the third person. A little kid growing up, thinking about what a prime minister looks like or what a premier looks like. And I think when me and Wab were kids, if you asked us or if you asked kids that look like us what a premier or what a prime minister look like, we would have never included ourselves. And I think a lot of kids out there right now who maybe didn't think of themselves as being leaders in whatever field, maybe now are starting to imagine themselves as leaders, imagine themselves as being successful, imagine themselves as having a place and belonging. And that's a really powerful thing. Thank you. Oh, one more. I was about to say thank you. No. I'll start off with a quick comment on it, but I invite if anyone else has more reflections on it. But you know, voting should be easy, and we wanted to make it as easy as possible. And in some communities, it is very easy. But one of the problems is for the mail-in ballot, to request a mail-in ballot, you've got to go online. And what if you don't have the same access to online? Well, you don't have the same access to online. Should I wait for a second? We're in the airport, so I guess that is kind of normal. But yeah, so I think that's a concern, that the mail-in process is awesome. It's great. People should definitely do it. But I'm just concerned where you've got limited internet access. You got to go online to request one. I'm worried about that for some communities. That's a concern for me. And so we always, as New Democrats, believe very firmly that everyone should participate. We need to make it as easy as possible. And where you can vote, please get out. Use the early voting. Advanced polling, go to the returning office and do that. If you need a mail-in ballot, definitely request one online. And for communities that have some barriers, we need to flag those right away so that we can find solutions, because no one should be precluded from voting because of any systemic barrier. That is horrible, and I know it happens, and we've got to get out in front of it as best as we can. And I'll invite anyone else that wants to add to that.
Yes. So the mail-in process is flawed, relying on internet, but also the service and how mail gets flown to the communities. And I've traveled up north extensively for court, so we fly in and out, and that is weather related, as well as now with the evacuations. Hunting season is upon us. This is sustenance and people's means of survival and surviving the winter. So this is very trying, but also the housing crisis. And I'm just going to make a brief little plug here for this territory. It's very real in Kenora, and so there's a lot of displaced people because the market is bought up with second homes, third homes, fifth homes, and Lake of the Woods is multi-million-dollar properties right now on the waterfront. And so where does that leave people? With low-income housing solutions on the streets. That's another barrier. So, yeah, very extensive barriers for people voting here.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody coming out. I love you all. It's amazing to see you all. You're amazing. Thank you to our media, of course, as always. Thank you all. See you there. Thank you.
Good job, man. Great job.
Killed it.